All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here. Merry Christmas. So Wayne LaPierre was talking the other day, and the NRA is getting some flack. And I keep hearing this, and again and again and again. I heard it on another interview when they say, "Well, what's your response to Wayne LaPierre's argument that, for instance, each of these gunmen, when confronted with an armed citizen or an armed police officer, shot themselves?" Well, I don't know what LaPierre is even speaking English, and I really didn't follow any of his arguments, and it's simply the NRA is simply responsible. So you're not getting an engagement. I've seen some good questions by the press interviewers of the anti-gun nuts saying, how do you explain that instance? Because it's actually black letter. The psychologist and the psychiatrist, if you read the literature, are all saying the same thing, that these people are not inclined, that these are basically suicide missions where they're trying to take as many people along with them to increase the statement and to show the hate and the pain, but they don't intend to walk out of there alive or to be captured, which means had that principal at the school had a gun, the guy probably would have shot himself before he got beyond the door very much. If, the guy in the mall did have a concealed carry weapons permit, and that guy didn't get too many people before he killed himself because he saw somebody was about to levy on him. And my point is, realistically, putting armed guards in school would not be that difficult. Take the teachers. When I grew up, we had gazillion teachers in the school. I think every school around here has a lot of teachers in it. There are hunters and outdoorsmen in every school who are familiar with weapons. There are retired police officers who would make great study hall monitors, who could also act as an armed deterrent in the school. And I did hear somebody mention, well, how about intermediate weapons like tasers and the like? I have no problem with that either. I think you got to have a lethal weapon available because if you have somebody with a gun, you need to be able to stop them. But taser, I mean, if the principal at least had a taser will take a gunman down. If you get the jump on them and you shoot them with the taser before they shoot you with the gun, you can take a gunman down with a taser. And that would be enough to get the person to the ground and with multiple people get the gun off. So I know I hate to bring this thing up around Christmas time again, but I feel like there's going to be a increasing war on gun ownership. And the great answer here right now is how to get these mentally deranged people off the street and how to get guns out of their hands. And the reality is, in Britain, where guns are banned, as a general rule, they have problems with armed street gangs. Imagine that. And as I told Bob Durgan the other day, if you could show me that you've eliminated all the heroin, cocaine, and marijuana from the United States of America, and there's no more coming in and nobody's getting it, and nobody's using it, then I might talk to you about, okay, well, maybe there is a way to eliminate all guns and prevent gun violence. But the realities are quite simple. You can take things away from law-abiding citizens, but you will not prevent the criminal element from getting what they want. The other problem is an unarmed society is always in danger of being oppressed. And, of course, everybody says, well, that's a silly notion, and that's left over from the colonies, and, that was just about militias to fight off the British and blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you that there's an entire contingent of people who lived in Germany who would have loved to have been armed at a certain point in history, but they weren't allowed to have guns. I can tell you that there were probably a few million people in Rwanda who would have loved to have been able to own guns at one point, but they don't exist any longer. And there are plenty of people throughout the world where totalitarian regimes depend upon the fact that the citizenry cannot be armed with anything meaningful at all. And to say that the disarming of the citizenry is safe in this day and age because things are different is absolutely false. But as the federal government creeps ever so closely or farther along the line to an authoritarian government, one of the things it's going to want to do ultimately is disarm the citizenry. And so any politician who wants to disarm you is probably not doing you a service. And I could go on and on because we get all these calls from people who have crimes. Like we heard somebody had a crime in the 70s and they can't get a firearm. And we heard somebody had a crime in the 80s and they can't get a firearm. All these rules about saying because somebody had a felony 40 years ago or 30 years ago or even 15 years ago or a misdemeanor of domestic violence because they fought with their brother in the trailer park 20 years ago, or they had a girlfriend who slapped them and they slapped them back, but they both pled guilty to mutual simple assault 15 years ago, to say that those people are per se unfit to own a gun and give them no ability to come and revive that ability is just another way of de facto disarming the citizenry. And keep in mind that when a lot of people pled guilty to various misdemeanors over the years, they were told this will have no effect on your gun rights whatsoever. If we simply just rewrote the law again, like they did the last time with the Lautenberg Amendment, simply said anybody who's ever had any misdemeanor or felony may no longer own a gun, they'll pull the guns out of millions of more hands. And then a few years after that, let's just rewrite it and say anybody who's ever driven faster than 20 miles over the speed limit has shown such poor judgment that they shouldn't be allowed to touch a firearm. We can pull the guns out of millions more. And then a few years later, we can say all summary offenses because they show a scoffing for the law. Let's pull the guns out of their hands. And you guys think I'm crazy, but that's how it's done. 540-0580. Gary, you're on the air. Hey, Gary.
Oh, sorry, Carl. I'd just like to say I don't think you're crazy. I think you're a great gun advocate. Keep up the good work. I just got a quick question. I got some friends, we all conceal carry. Can you legally conceal carry in a bank in PA?
I think you can. I don't see it on the exclusion. However, if the bank has a posting, no firearms, you have to honor it.
Right. But if it's not posted, you can do it, right?
I hope so.
That's what I'm thinking.
The more interesting one's the post office, right?
Well, see, the post office is federal, so you can't, right?
That's what they say, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what about, here's a tricky question. What if it's a federal credit union? I mean, the building's not federal, right?
No, I think it's just their charter, so it's not really federal property. They're just announcing that their charter is federal, not state.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right,
brother.
That's all I need. Thanks.
540-0580. Barbara.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I have a quick question about the statute of limitations for a medical procedure.
Okay.
My daughter had an operation at 16, brain surgery, and it went okay, not great, but now she's 10 years down the road having complications, possibly from the surgery. Is there any recourse at this point?
Well, the statute of limitations is 2 years from her 18th birthday because she was a minor.
Okay.
It's usually 2 years. But now, there's one other thing. There's something called the discovery rule.
Mm-hmm.
And we say that it tolls until you discover the problem.
Okay.
So here's where it gets tricky. That always can be a big fight.
Mm-hmm.
That can always be a really big fight, right, as you can imagine.
Right.
So it doesn't mean you're out of the water. So let me ask the question this way. If you went backwards 2 years from today, would you have known or should you have known that there was a problem with that surgery?
Okay, well, now that she has had a change in her health and she's become pregnant, and the pregnancy has brought out stuff that happened in the surgery we were unaware of.
Okay, so that's less than 2 years.
No. Oh, yes, 2 years since we discovered something, yes.
In other words, I'm saying go back 2 years in your mind. 2 years ago, would you have known what you knew now, which would cause you to believe there was a problem with the surgery?
No.
Okay. So you're following me?
Yes, I see, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I want you to hold on for a minute.
Okay.
And we come up on the break here. I'm going to give you a phone number I want you to call. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Craig, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I was just wondering, I'm a new gun owner. I haven't owned a gun for 30 years, and I'm wondering where I can go and get a training course.
Well, if you go to the NRA website, you should be able to look stuff up. The other place I would recommend is the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers. Are you in the Harrisburg area?
Yeah, I'm in Hershey.
You're all perfect. That's really close to you. Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers, up the way to describe them is they're between Hershey and Harrisburg in the country.
Yeah, it's right off of
Nice
Road.
Yep. Look them up on the web. if you just go to one of their meetings, and if you're not a member already, go join. Then they have tons of instructors who go there, who shoot there. They have a great range, all kinds of facilities. But most importantly, they do have a huge program of training and regular instruction on shooting and self-defense and the whole 9 yards.
Okay, thank you very much for your help.
And I'll tell you, I've been around to a lot of the clubs, and there's a lot of nice fishing game clubs. So I mean, I'm not saying that they're the only one, but they come to mind because it seems like when I've been out there to give my talk, they clearly seem to have the most number of just instructors out there.
Okay.
All right?
Well, you have a nice Christmas.
All right, man. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
540-0580. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here. 540-0580. Merry Christmas. Oh, boy, oh, boy. It's Christmas time. Time for some gog or eggnog or some such thing. Jean, you are on the air. What's up?
Good afternoon, Carl. How are you?
Good.
Take you off speakerphone. Is that better?
I'm here. Yep.
Hey, Merry Christmas to you. Hey, I don't want to just make this real quick, and we have some mutual friends. Just real quick, I've always wanted to talk to you with Brent and George and those guys. So one of these days, some good friends, really good people. This is pertaining to we have a foreign vehicle that we bought. I don't know if I need to mention the manufacturer or not, but that we had our local mechanic called us in and said, you need to come in and take a look at your vehicle. We've made the local dealership aware. There's major rust in the frame. They've been aware of this situation in other models, but not the specific model that you have. You need to go to the dealership. They're going to document it. So we did, but because it was the not the most popular version of the other two models of the other frames that had been recalled, there was no recall at that point. The mechanic had told us, and the supervisor at the local dealership had told us that if I were you, I would get rid of this vehicle because it's a safety hazard. If you have children in this car, he said, I wouldn't be driving around with my kids. So I started communicating back and forth via emails, and we didn't want a lot. We just wanted to be, get something back towards the fact that we were going to have to get rid of a vehicle that we had bought. And we went all the way up to finally the regional manager and the national manager, I guess, for consumer affairs, and they basically stonewalled us all the way around. And I did contact, I guess what they call their vice president of customer retention, that I did get a reply back from his secretary who said, well, we're really doing nothing, but if you want to buy a newer vehicle or a used certified one in the next 1 year, we'll give you $2,500 back. And then she extended that for 2 years.
Right.
But at that point, we took the car, took it to an auction, sold it, and, bought another vehicle because they were going to do nothing. I just wonder now, we did get a letter in the mail. That vehicle has been, and it's ironic, I had mentioned to my wife, we should just park this thing in our backyard, tarp it, and wait till they recall it, because at some point they will. Well, sure enough, I guess they have. So my question is, I would be very satisfied and happy with some kind of a cash, take that $2,500, because we bought another vehicle, but not through their dealership network or certified. We did buy another version of that vehicle that we had it inspected and checked into, but I'm not going to pay a premium in a dealership when I can buy one that's similar, on a private sale. Right. I have all the correspondence, and I have all the detailed documents and photos that, I'm wondering, is there any recourse to take that back and say we would like to get a cash reimbursement on this $2,500 voucher since we went and bought another vehicle, and you now are recalling the one that we had sold because you told us it's not safe to drive, but you're doing nothing for us. So they recalled your vehicle? Just recently. At that point, when we sold it a year and a half ago, we auctioned it off to get rid of it because, we were told by the dealership, and I have communications back and forth with the supervisor. It said, if this were my family, I wouldn't be driving this vehicle. I know. So how much money are you out? Well, we bought it used, and then we ended up. I mean, we would probably still be driving that vehicle, but at this point, if we still had that same car, from what I understand in the other vehicles, what they did with the other two models, the same exact frame, it's the same plant, but it's just a different model. They would reconstruct the frame or give them, basically a new vehicle, no matter how old the vehicle was. So that's not easy to clarify how much money we're out.
Right. So let me ask it this way, though. Mm-hmm. But the other way to measure your damages is you spent X dollars on the vehicle, and when you sold it, how much were you out on the difference between the two?
Oh, geez, that's difficult. I haven't really, thought it through that much. But I mean, there could be $5,000 to $8,000. Yeah, okay. Probably $5,000 to $10,000, $8,000. Okay.
And how long did you drive it for?
We had it for, I think, 2001, probably 2-3 years. Okay. I have to go back, and I didn't have all this, I was lucky enough to hear you were online.
So we might get into a position where someone would say, well, then you lost about $8,000 on the vehicle by auctioning it, but at the same time, you got 3 years' worth of use out of it, so you probably didn't have any real loss. I mean, that's an argument, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so now you have a $2,500 voucher that we gave you that we said you could use on one of our vehicles, but we really just did that because it was good customer service, not because we actually owed you anything. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you have a great claim. I don't think you do. But
if we would have let that thing sit in the backyard tarped right now, we'd probably go and they would probably
give you a new vehicle. Well, now whoever you sold it to got to do that.
Probably. Yeah, I know, kicking the butt in it. But no way we would be driving that vehicle with the extent of the damage that it had at that point. It was because they'd come to determine they didn't have enough rust preventative on the frame.
Right.
And he said at any point if you were T-boned or if you turned this vehicle too quickly, he said this, and this is coming from the service manager of a local dealership of that brand.
No, I understand. But nobody, here's your problem. Nobody actually got hurt. And the recall happened after you were done with it, and it looks like you had it in the normal course of wear and tear, versus what you lost on the resale of it. So it's sort of like a near miss.
Correct.
And unfortunately, unless somebody gets hurt, the law doesn't allow for collections on near misses. So or you're in the zone of danger when something happens. So if I'm standing next to you and somebody shoots you negligently, I might be able to argue I was standing so close to you that I was in the zone of danger.
Yeah.
And that watching you get injured really have harmed me psychologically.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a near miss on negligence without injury is not going to result in anything. And more importantly, your damages, even if we could get to the liability phase, your damages are going to be hard to prove because your damages were never actualized. Nobody ever got hurt. The car never broke. You got a couple years out of the car. You sold it for an appropriate decrease in value. Yeah. I don't think you have anything. I'm sorry.
Nah, that's all right. I just thought, with this voucher here, that maybe there'd be a way to get it instead of buying another vehicle since we've already replaced it.
Sell it to Brent for on 80% of face value. Lube him up with some cheap beer.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll track down with the VIN numbers or way to track it down, see who I sold it to, see if they still have it, and I'll buy it from them and then take it back for the recall.
It could be done. Yeah, maybe Carfax somehow, or with PennDOT. I think you could probably run the VIN and see who has it, but I'm not sure what you'd need to do that or what they let you do or not.
I should have just thrown a daggone snowplow in the front of that thing and used it for the last year and a half for around the yard stuff.
Yeah.
God, isn't that kicking the butt?
Well, trust me. I mean, it's like the guy that goes to the yard sale and buys the minnow bucket and finds $2,000 in cash in the minnow bucket, Yeah, and then
exactly.
somebody later goes, well, I think Grandpa used to keep money in the old minnow bucket. Anybody look in there? And you go, what? Huh? That's a true story, by the way.
Hey, well, you have a wonderful holiday.
All right, you too. Merry Christmas.
Thanks.
All right, 540-0580. Steve, you're on the air. Steve.
Oh, hey.
Hey, what's going on?
Just wanted to make a comment real quick about this Connecticut thing, not to bring everybody down, but I appreciate your rational reasoning and trying to spread a little history lesson for everybody. But my question is, why isn't anybody talking about how this kid went in not once, twice, or 3 or 4 times, but 5 times to buy a gun and was denied.
Right. How can he go in and keep getting denied and nobody goes to check out what he's up to?
Exactly. And I mean, it seems to me,
because they're so busy running the serial numbers the Social Security numbers of innocent, law-abiding people and giving them their guns that it never occurs to them to follow up on the guy who keeps getting denied. Now, if he lied on the forms, they're very good about that. I mean, you lie on the forms, and sometimes within 10 minutes they're on top of you.
Right. And it just seems to me, there's their point of action right there. Instead of going, doing this whole emotional, we got to ban everything now. But why don't the system worked, Let me explain. Let
me stop you for a minute. Let's just start talking about knee-jerk reactions, okay? A long time ago, they had this smog in L.A., and somebody said that the power plants were putting out too much nitrous oxides. And as a result, it was combining with the hydrocarbons from the tailpipe emissions of the cars in L.A. and creating this terrible smog, okay? So what did they do? But the legislature put clamps on the power plants to lower their NOx emissions, and NOx meaning the different types of nitrous oxides. Okay, they did that. Now, I'm going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what happened, all right?
Gotcha.
All right, hold on a minute. 540-0580. All right, Carl Rominger, we're back. 540-0580. So, Steve, I was just giving you this really boring lecture about nitrous oxide and volatile organic compounds coming out of tailpipes in L.A. But here's the nutshell. So the legislature says, okay, we got these VOCs coming out of the tailpipes, and we got these NOxs coming out of the smokestacks. They're combining to make smog. We'll fix the problem. So they pass a law, and at great expense, they make all the power companies put on scrubbers and minimize the NOx emissions. And then the smog gets worse because had they bothered to check with the scientists would have said, you're correct, but it's a little more complicated than that because the NOx is combined with the VOCs to create smog, and then the excess NOx is recombined with the smog to destroy some of the smog. So what you did was increase the level of smog by removing or lowering the level of NOx's to a level that optimized smog production and offset smog destruction. And the point of that whole story is the science and the interplay was much more complicated than what the public wanted and what the legislature thought would be a great knee-jerk reaction to fix the smog because they only got halfway through it. And we're seeing it with the gun debate. Everybody who's anti-gun just wants to scream, oh my God, all these guns, that's the problem. The NRA is the problem. You created this problem. And the answer is no. The problem is that some real whack jobs who are completely nutso and who have complete mission in mind, but who also turn out to be, on average, a little bit more intelligent than most of us, can figure out that if I want to go on a murder-suicide rampage and I want to maximize my statement, I probably shouldn't go to the local police barracks and start shooting it up. You ever see Terminator? You remember when the Terminator goes and they shoot up the police barracks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, has any guy who didn't want to just be shot dead, in the first volley or so, gone to a police station and shot it up? The answer is no. Now
you go to the area that puts the sign on the window that says gun-free school zone, and reality comes shooting through the door. Notice
that the crazies don't go to the gun stores to shoot them up. I mean, there was one case of that not too long ago where somebody went crazy in a gun store, and I think he was promptly shot at some point.
Yeah.
My point on this is, though, the knee-jerk reaction is ban guns, which doesn't work. Give up harsher penalties to people who do these things. The guys are all planning to kill themselves anyhow. When somebody...
The interesting thing is, this is all... Right now, I don't want to pin it on liberals or conservatives, but, it's mainly liberals are being very emotional about it. And it just seems to me that this whole incident could have been avoided if we didn't have this political correctness of, I have this kid who has obvious mental issues, and I've had to pull him out of school every once in a while. This is speaking from the mother who's deceased now. And, we have to have this kid in a regular, normal environment just so he can have a regular, normal childhood.
Well, let's stop
there are obvious differences
Let me stop you for a minute. So Bloomberg Business Week, which is published by Michael Bloomberg's company, and as we know, Michael Bloomberg's no fan of guns, However, Bloomberg Businessweek in the latest edition has an article where they basically say banning guns is not really going to make a difference, and stronger background checks really aren't going to make a difference, and closing the loopholes for gun shows aren't going to really make a difference. What will make a difference is better mental health intervention. And what they're pointing out is in the last 50 years, now let's think about this. In the last 50 years, we went from about 600,000 beds for psychiatric patients, okay, to less than 50,000, even though the population's been going up.
Wow.
Now, where did all those beds go? Well, we closed down all these mental institutions. Magically, in the same 50 years, the prison population has increased by almost the same number of beds as we've released from the psychiatric side of things, okay? So there's a little tale to be told there. But more importantly, even recently, even as our science and our ability to intervene psychologically and psychiatrically met with medicine and non-medicine therapies has increased, our willingness as a society to use them has gone down because we don't want to pay for it. And it's a classic cost accounting problem, which is, well, we spend the money up front and then we don't see the results. So imagine a world where I invent a machine. I'm going to invent a machine that can prevent hurricanes, right? But it costs $15.5 billion to run it a year. So can you hear the debate? Are you ready? Well, Rominger wants $15.5 billion to prevent the hurricane. But that's a lot of money to spend, so we're going to only give them, $7.5 billion because we don't want to spend all that money preventing hurricanes because we never have hurricanes. Well, yeah, you never have hurricanes because we're preventing them with the machine, right? And that's going to become the logic. And so the problem is when you have a way of preventing a future harm, but the future harm never occurs because you're preventing it, it doesn't seem like a really good way to spend your money because after a while you start to believe that you don't need to spend this money.
And it's interesting because the progressive view is like, we have to make all these laws to prevent things, but we, don't want to do common sense, practicality to prevent things. And it just drives me crazy.
How many parents have you heard call into various radio shows? I had one on here last week, but I heard them on the national radio shows too, and that tells me something. They're coming out of the woodwork to say, I had a kid who had a lot of problems, and whenever I tried to get help for that kid, what they basically tell me is there's nothing we can do until he hurts somebody, or there's nothing we can do until he hurts himself, or there's nothing we can do until he's half dead on the street and arrested by the police, and even then, best we're going to do is throw him in jail. There's actually some theory out there. One of the other things you'll notice about these shooters is none of them they all seem to come from a middle class and above families.
Yep.
And none of them come from poor families or inner city families or families that we would traditionally consider at risk. And the theory is, here's the theory that I've heard propounded. I don't know if it's true or not, so I'm just going to caveat it, but I like it, is that those kids are already on such a minimal existence that when they exhibit these problems or have these severe issues, the system does do something for them, does get a hold of them and put them into a foster home or into an institution, or they get removed from the parents and get some services and things like that.
Yeah, there's attention given to it.
Because those and there's two reasons for that. One is because those families are already in contact with the system a lot of times in ways that middle-class families aren't. And a lot of middle-class families don't want to always admit that they have problems, so they probably shelter it, and I understand that. But it's interesting because that tells us something. That tells us that kids who would come from abject poverty, the ones you would think would have the most anger at society, are not the ones that are doing this. So it's clearly a mental health problem, and it's clearly a lack of sufficient intervention because if it was some other source, we should see it across all socioeconomic backgrounds. And we just don't see these kinds of mass suicide shooters, as I'm going to start calling them because it seems that that's their goal is to kill themselves and take as many people with them. We don't see them coming from
their late teens to early 20s as well.
Right,
so,
which is also because that's at a certain point when things finally get, their brains are not completely developed until you're, 20-something, right. and they're in a high flux. But they also start to get independence, which means, when you're 15, you can't just walk into a gun store and try to buy a gun. When you're 15, you can't just drive the car around the street and go where you want and start your own little secret underground brooding the same way that an 18 or 20-year-old can.
Yeah. Well, my point is, if the signs are there, we shouldn't be treating these kids as regular kids, because they're not. We'll sit there and say they have special needs and we need to be politically correct about it and put them in a normal environment.
It's called mainstreaming.
Yes, but they're not going to function normally. So, and that has to be recognized. But on the outside of it, I'm getting really tired of the government taking away,
well, don't you ever
taking away my rights that are supposed to protect me from the government?
When David Axelrod said no crisis, no good crisis should go wasted, right?
Right.
And here's the point. Do you think that these are reactions? I mean, here's the question. Are these reactions to this event? By the public they are, but by the politicians? No. Politicians are usually ready to roll with and if they're really clever politicians, wait until the timing is right to get what they want. So if you want to disarm society, if you're a firm believer that guns should be out of the hands of the citizenry, if you're a law enforcement professional, and I go nuts about this, and I always say this all the time, every police officer I know is pro-gun, but every police organization is anti-gun. If you're somebody in politics or in power who wants to disarm the average citizen or remove guns from society, this is going to be your springboard to try to do it. I like what Rush Limbaugh keeps pointing out, though, which is that with the social media out there and the ability of people to communicate directly and sidestep the spoon-feeding of the media, which this is right now, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, I'll admit that. Rush doesn't always admit that he's mainstream, which drives me nuts.
Yes.
The drive by me, I'm not going to, like, Rush, if you have 20 million listeners, you're now mainstream. You're just going to have to suck it up and admit it.
Yep.
But my point is, at this stage, these people want to use this event to get to a political end. But there's enough information flowing out there. So even Business Week, owned by Bloomberg, wrote an article that basically said, yeah, we can stiffen some things, we can do some other things, but banning guns isn't really going to make a difference. It's better mental health treatment and commitments. And there's a study out there where some sociologists showed that 17% of the interstate variations in the murder rate can be directly tied to their mental health laws, meaning that basically a fifth of all murders in some states could be eliminated if they adopted the mental health procedures and controls of the neighboring states, which are tougher. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, I think, if they open their eyes, they'll see this little scare that they put into all the gun owners out there and people who have thought about buying a gun. Have you been to Bass Pro or any gun shop around the area?
I haven't, but I've heard the guns are moving like hotcakes.
They're out of everything, ammo, everything. And it's if you want to stir an economy, start threatening tires and everything else, because it's just
my mom bought a shotgun right after Obama was elected, so I think she was ahead of the curve.
Right. So anyway, keep it up. Keep putting that rational reasoning out there, because it's needed. These people I respect. They have their emotional way of thinking about things, but it's not always great to think emotionally. So
there's nothing wrong with being emotional. But, and I come back to that, and I could go on and on and on about, and I have a whole list of examples of things we could talk about where somebody makes a choice or a policy decision based on seemingly great logic, but it's not the real science.
Right.
And I think we're going to discover the real science is eliminating the mental health problem, either by fixing these people or, as you say, maybe not mainstreaming them and institutionalizing them. And that's dangerous in and of itself, because other governments use mental health procedures acts to lock people up who are sane but political opponents. We have to be cautious there. But in the modern era, we've got these kids. We can identify a lot of them, and intervention and careful monitoring, and maybe somebody getting them involuntarily committed once or twice so that they're on the list of people who can't buy firearms would be helpful.
Yeah, and they should follow up with these 5 disapprovals and say, all right, why is this guy trying to get a firearm 5 times in a month been neglected or rejected 5 times, and then do a follow up on that crap.
I think twice in rapid. Hey, if you're rejected once, and you're rejected twice, you should probably get the message. And if you're not, then it's probably time to come talk with you.
Yeah, and, Bob Durgan, he got all upset at the NRA not giving a response and all the conservatives laying low, and I totally respect that the NRA didn't do it. I'm a member. I'm a proud member. And, it's like I was like, just keep it cool. Don't say anything until all these people just, wear themselves out a little bit.
Yeah.
And as the media started dwindling on this story, except for, the leftist stuff. But it's like, and then they came out. And
I got to go to break, Steve.
All right, I'm going to go.
All right, brother. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Bum, 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 bum. Merry Christmas. John, you're on the air.
Yeah, I have a comment about this whole gun control, and the NRA said we can afford to put a policeman in every school.
Right.
And I'm not sure we can do that, but why not have a tax on larger magazines, bigger than 10, $2 a bullet? Okay, to pay for that.
Okay.
Okay, as a way to say, okay, we're doing something. When you tax it, you'll have less of them. Don't make it illegal. And just say, and instead of using policemen, let's bring our soldiers who are in nice uniform, because as everybody says, you don't go where you see a visible presence.
Well, the Posse Comitatus requires that we don't put our soldiers on American soil and use the military here. They got to stay on the other side of the Rubicon. But I'm going to go with get all the retired police officers who want to be study hall monitors, and or get all the teachers who want to go through a training. Here's the reality. If you don't think that the average public school teacher in your public school is capable of getting trained on how to safely use a firearm and responsibly hold it and use it in the school, then why the hell are you letting your kids go there in the first place?
Right, and I mean, if they can't figure out how to do that, and I mean, over in the Soviet Union before it collapsed, do you know they used to force every student to know how to take apart an AK-47 blindfolded?
Well, maybe it was a positive thing. I feel bad for the poor 6-year-old who took a gun to school because he felt that was the only way he had to protect himself. That's who I feel bad for.
Yeah, but I mean, except for the fact that I'm not sure with all the money the government's spending everywhere else, and maybe we could say, okay, this is a way to do it, and say, okay, anything above a 10-round, you pay an extra $1 a bullet.
But to assume that creates, but that also for some people would say, but that's like admitting that a high-capacity magazine is the problem, and the reality is the cosmetics of the gun and the capacity of the magazine is not the problem. If you've got a 1,000-round magazine, as long as there's somebody there with a bullet to shoot you, it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, 1,000 rounds, but I'm just saying as a means of paying.
No, I understand that.
It's not that saying it's any.
Well, I'll tell you what. As part of meaningful property tax reform in Pennsylvania, when they get around to that, they can also figure out where the schools can get money for this as well. I got to take the next caller, John. I appreciate it. 540-0580. Dan, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, I would contend that political correctness has killed more people than any handgun or 15-round magazine or 30-round magazine.
Well, ideas have killed more people than anything else in the history of mankind. Remember that.
I mean, we have to strip search my grandmother at the airport instead of a couple Middle Eastern guys in line. We can't tell people that there's a link between breast cancer and abortion, and we can't tell people that there's a link between these kids shooting up schools and mass shootings, and the Ritalin that we're giving them at pre-adolescence. We're giving them a class 4 narcotic pre-adolescent, and expect with the side effects that include suicidal tendencies, and expect everything to be okay.
Well, let me ask it this way: Israel. When was the last time that some terrorist, or wannabe enemy of the state went into a school in Israel and shot it up? And the answer is...
The only thing I ever hear is they blow up a bus, they strap a bomb to themselves and blow up a bus. I don't hear them getting away with a mass shooting because I think they get popped pretty quick.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
They get an asshole right in the middle of their forehead. Did I say you can't?
Yeah, I don't know what you said. It's fine with me. I'm not the FCC. I don't care. Anyhow, no, I'm gonna take one more guy here. He's got a legitimate legal question of some sort. All right, 540-0580. Jeff, I know you've been waiting patiently while I've been debating all the world's politics and solving all the world's problems, but let me solve yours now.
Yeah, hi Carl. Thanks for taking my call.
Yep. What do you want to know?
Yeah, I had I got an investment company, and one of my investors who lives in the UK wanted some of his funds back, or just needed some funds. So I transferred it to him about a month ago, or 2 months now, and it was $15,000. And the bank ended up transferring 15,000 pounds, which comes to about $25,000.
Ooh.
Now I don't do electronic banking. It's a pretty sleepy company. So when I got my statement, which was 3 weeks later, that's when I noticed. I contacted them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, right. We'll try." And they asked me if I could get in touch with the guy, and I said, "Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we're not that best of friends." And I'm sure he will be happy with more money than less.
Right.
And that. So anyhow, long story short, they have not. I finally did get in touch with him. He's willing to send it back, but he says that's going to take me, it's my time, it's my effort. They have to pay me and sort me out and this and that. And I haven't heard hair nor hide from them since. What's the position on something like that?
Well, who made the mistake? Did you fill out paperwork with the bank for what to transfer?
Yeah. I took it right in, and they even admitted it was their fault. It was. It was supposed to be $15,000. It says right on the form, USD, $15,000.
Right.
And when they did the transfer,
I think you got to get the money back from the guy, but I think if you incur any expense with him, the bank should be liable for that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That's the best answer I got.
Yeah.
5-4. We're done. That's right. Here comes the music. Hey guys, I'll be back. Talk with you later. In the meantime, go to RomingerLaw.com or call the office 241-6070. 241-6070.